All right, continuing my quick look through some biblical archaeologists and their sources on the nature and discipline of biblical archaeology. I have a 2005 book by Alfred Horth and John McCrae, Bible Archaeology, an exploration of the history and culture of early civilizations. Page 11, as archaeology helps place biblical characters and events within the stream of extra-biblical history and geography, it answers those who would try to mythologize the Bible. But it must be recognized that it does not prove, and he puts that word in quotes, the truth of the Bible in its theological and spiritual statements. The excavations and identifications of such biblical sites as Babylon, Caesarea, Corinth, Ephesus, Hazor, Syria, Susa have greatly illuminated our understandings of these ancient cities and their historical settings, but this has not proved the Bible to be the Word of God. Gosh, is he quoting me in my videos? That sounds like what I say. No, he's not. He wrote this in 2005. Page 16. Archaeological excavation is not an exact science capable of producing irrefutable evidence for a given hypothesis. Gosh, did he consult me when he wrote this book? No, they did not. Page 42. Archaeology cannot address the question of the date of creation. Archaeology can say little concerning the Garden of Eden. Finally, on page 46, some scholars, after analyzing the archaeological excavated text in Mesopotamia, rather than proving Genesis and the flood story true, came to this conclusion. They're reading the same evidence, but their conclusions are different. Genesis' account was a myth borrowed from Mesopotamia and was therefore plagiarized, not inspired. Whoa! Decimates the anti-Mormon tissue of fantasy, doesn't it? Here's another book, The Walk Archaeologies, Digging Up the Bible Lands by Ronald Harker. He has a lot of ideas. I'm going to only share one with you. There is no certainty today where the last meal of Jesus and the apostles occurred, where it was eaten, and the room shown to visitors is part of a building built 1,300 years after the crucifixion. Christ has left no material traces on earth. Haven't I said that? There is nothing archaeological that you can confirm about Jesus. Nothing. That's what he says too. Christ has left no material traces on earth, and archaeologists know that all they can do is reconstruct, not prove, reconstruct the environment of the time in which he lived, taught, and died. That's on page 71. Finally, Bible Archaeology and Faith. Harry Thomas Frank, who was a disciple of William F. Albright. He was, some of his materials are dated. Some of them are very, very interesting. On page 339, I'm just going to read this selection so that you know the conclusions that biblical archaeologists have come to, rather than the supposed uniform of acceptance and agreements of the proof that the anti-Mormons assume biblical archaeology has given to the Bible. On page 339, when the results of archaeology began to come into the picture, they were at first not comforting to many defenders of the Bible. The Old Testament was definitely not mankind's oldest document. Hebrew was not the first language. Indeed, the Hebrews had appropriated it. Worse, the biblical account of the flood had Babylonian and Sumerian antecedents. The Psalms praising the God of Israel were similar in form and often language to those extolling the pagan Egyptian god Re, or the pagan Babylonian god Marduk, and even the Canaanite Babylonian pagan Baal. The pithy proverbs of the Bible were similar to examples from Mesopotamia and Egypt. Even the law of Moses was found to have almost verbatim parallels in the law codes of Hammurabi. The historical narrative of the Bible was therefore seen to be limited. As the findings of historical documents multiplied, the originality of the Old Testament came into question. You don't read any talk of proof there, do you? Listen to what he says on page 340. Just an excerpt. Of course, I'll be accused of taking all this out of context. That's the only thing the anti-Mormons can do when they're destroyed with the evidence. So, get the book yourself. Bible, Archaeology, and Faith. There are some much positive ideas in here. I'm simply destroying the anti-Mormon stupid argument of the Bible being proven. And I have much stronger materials for my bigger video. Assertions that the Bible have been proven were sure to come after all of the Mesopotamian, Canaanite, and Egyptian backgrounds and the Babylonian backgrounds came to light. Archaeology was claimed to have settled many questions concerning various events, including the flood, Sir Woolley at Ur, and the conquest of Canaan, Garstang at Jericho. It did not matter that the field excavators had been considerably more guarded in their conclusions than what was alleged to them, like the anti-Mormons allege that the biblical archaeology proves the Bible. The excavators don't say that. It mattered not at all that later work with better techniques had corrected earlier conclusions. What was once thought to be historically validated has now been found to have multitudinous, various, different, wildly contradictory explanations. You don't get that from the anti-Mormons, though, do you? No, of course not. Even worse, it did not seem to matter that the defenders of the, quote, truth of the Bible were committing the same error that the detractors had made earlier. They assumed faith was open to the findings of historical disciplines. Oh, that anti-Mormons would just shut up and begin to learn first. Read the biblical archaeologists and scholars, man. You are so far off base, it is pathetic. You think the findings of the historical disciplines have to support your faith. In other words, you believe the Bible because of the archaeology. You're a fool for doing so. Because the general trustworthiness of the narrative has been established, it was widely assumed that the spiritual and moral truths of the Bible had been made credible. The certainty of faith does not rest upon the conclusions of science, historical or otherwise, and I would add archaeological to that. Faith, the absolute assurance of man's meaningful dependence upon the activity of God, is hardly dependent upon the transitory methodologies of science. Rewind this tape and listen to that again. Archaeology has provided a very different orientation for understanding the Bible than was possible a century or even a generation ago. Some of the narratives have been shown to have a generalized historicity. Others have been completely transformed. At places, it has shown their historical inaccuracy. You don't read about proof here. You don't see anything about proof here. The Bible requires no special pleading, like our anti-Mormon question does. We examine it with all the literary and historical tools at our command, but we don't depend upon those tools as the final answer, like the anti-Mormons do. Now I'm going to head off onto my bigger video, my more full and complete video, that has the real powerful materials. You're going to love it. The anti-Mormons are wrong. Don't listen to them. It's that simple. They don't know what they're talking about.